started. Don't be shy. Come on up so I can see you. Y'all are so nice to turn out. Come on up so we can. We are here today to commemorate Workers' Memorial Day. I will have some remarks at the very end, but the first thing we're going to do today is to recognize this solemn occasion. I'd like to bring to the stage Rabbi Abram Goodstein from Temple Beth Shalom, and he's going to lead us this morning as we open up the ceremony. Rabbi?
Thank you, Joelle, and I'm honored to be here. I remember when I took Hazmat 1 training as a slope worker, I discovered the lethal gas known as hydrogen sulfide, also referred to as H2S. H2S in higher concentrations becomes difficult to detect and can kill almost instantly. And during my time on the slope, I learned of the workers that this deadly gas had claimed. And this is the reality that many workers live with. Every day, people toil in the proximity of harmful and even deadly factors. They do so because the work is important and meaningful, but the risk can be constant, and sometimes workers pay the ultimate price. So today, we honor those workers who have passed away while on duty. And we also acknowledge that these deaths should have never happened in the first place, that fears of lethal factors like H2S should not hang over our workers as a constant threat. A worker's mind should be free to focus on their job instead of travailing over its mortal cost. There should be dignity in a hard day's labor, pride in getting the job done, integrity in supporting oneself and one's family. Passing away while on the job is not just a loss of life. It's the theft of these virtues and the ruin these deaths leave behind. Today, we are not just mourning workers who have died on the job, we're mourning the lives those workers could have lived. And to these individuals who've lost their life when their lives are on the line, I offer this prayer called the Mourner's Kaddish. It's going to be in Hebrew. If you know it, please say it with me. Vitkadal vitkadash shemei rabbah, v'ilma divra chirotei v'yamlik malchutei, v'chayechon u'vyamechon u'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, v'agalat v'zman kari v'imru. Amen. V'hei shmei rabbah mevarak le'olam u'lamei almaya, yitbarak v'yishtabak v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitalei v'yitalal shemei dekudashah b'richu, le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata, Tushbechata v'nechamata, v'miran v'alma v'imru. Amen. V'hei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleni v'yakol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Osei shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleni v'yakol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and to all workers, to which we say, Amen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. We really appreciate those words and that prayer. The next person we're going to bring up to the microphone is the newly chosen chair of the Anchorage Assembly, Christopher Constant. He has been our friend for a long time. As long as he's been on that body, he has been an advocate for workers and is a testament to that commitment. This is the first public speaking event that he has chosen to attend since he became the chair, our friend, the chair of the Anchorage Assembly, Christopher Constant.
Good morning, everybody. So today we gather to remember and honor the workers who've lost their lives on the job. Workers' Memorial Day is a solemn occasion, but it's also an opportunity to recognize the value and dignity of every worker. You know, we have two major challenges, I think, in the city and in the country right now, and that's homelessness and workforce. We need people to be doing the work that's going to keep our community, our city, our state growing. And the fact is, we have the biggest infrastructure investments of our lifetime. We don't have workers to fulfill the jobs. That's an issue. In Anchorage, we know that workers are the backbone of our community. They power our economy and keep our city running smoothly. But unfortunately, essential work comes at a cost. And I would be less than honest if I didn't speak for a moment about the fact that Anchorage itself, the city that I sit on the board as the chair of, has been found by the state ACOSH to be a severe violator. And the fact is, we have work to do in our own house, just like everybody does across the country. So what we did to that end very recently was we created our own internal safety council, which we're going to bring together the department heads who are in charge of all of the utilities and enterprises and various departments of the city to make sure that we aren't blindly ignoring the fact that worker safety is a priority. According to the most recent data from OSHA, there were 25 fatal work injuries in Alaska in 2021. In 2019, it was one of the worst years, if not the worst year ever for workers in Alaska. Thankfully, those numbers have come down. We'll know soon what the numbers are for 2022. But 25 lives, 25 families, 25 holes in the hearts of our community. This is significant loss. Those workers weren't numbers. They were husbands and wives, mothers and fathers, sons and daughters, friends and neighbors, brothers and sisters. They had dreams and aspirations just like everyone else, and their losses felt deeply by those who knew and loved them. And we recognize them today. As we remember them, we must also renew our commitment to workplace safety. We must ensure that every worker has access to the training, the equipment, the protections that they need to do their job safely. And we must hold employers accountable when they put lives at risk. The theme of today's event, clearly, Safe Jobs Now. It's a powerful reminder that every worker has value, deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, and let us honor the memory of those we've lost by working to create a safer and more just world for all of our workers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Assemblymember Constant. All right, next to the dais, I'm going to invite Jane Erickson. Jane Erickson is a member of the Alaska Nurses Association, and we are really glad to have her here to talk about a workforce that is lives and works and has working conditions that are unlike any of the rest of us on multiple fronts. So let Jane talk a little bit about nursing.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Jane Erickson. And thank you, Joelle, for inviting me to speak today. I work at a local hospital. I'm a nurse. I've been a nurse for, since 1986. How many years is that?
That's a lot.
That's a lot. Anyways, I'm going to talk briefly just on workplace violence in the healthcare setting. When we go to school, we're not taught this. We're not taught how to defend ourselves. We're not taught that our patients can be violent to us or the families or the visitors. And since COVID, that has just become a thing. So several factors are driving the staffing crisis at the bedside and the subsequent increase in workplace violence. Number one is the corporatization of healthcare and profit motives led to a systemic underinvestment in healthcare worker safety and well-being, creating unsustainable work environments. When healthcare workers are assigned more patients than they can safely care for, patient safety suffers. There's an increase in infections, longer hospital stays, chronic debilitations, and the worker safety suffer, and burnout and moral injury occurs. Second, the healthcare workers are facing increased mandatory overtime and on-call hours, creating unstable and unsustainable work schedules. Number three, healthcare workers are 5 times more likely to experience workplace violence than other workers. And last, nursing education programs are either understaffed, underfunded, or being cut altogether. UAA, for example, from 2019 to 2022 lost $47 million from state funding. The nursing program took a significant cut in funding, lost professors and staff, and discontinued the 2-year associate degree program, focusing only on the 4-year Bachelor of Science nursing program, thus exacerbating the nursing crisis at the bedside. During the pandemic, nurses saw an increase in workplace violence from patients, family, and now visitors. How did it become a thing to yell at, spit at, throw water on, or just plain out hit you? There is currently no OSHA standard that requires employers to implement violence prevention plans that would help reduce workplace violence injuries among healthcare and social service workers. The lack of an enforceable standard means that OSHA, the federal agency created to protect worker safety, has few, One moment. Meaningful tools to protect healthcare workers from the threat of workplace violence. One of the best protections employers can offer their workers is to establish a zero-tolerance policy toward workplace violence. This policy should cover all workers, patients, clients, visitors, contractors, and anyone else who may come in contact with company personnel. I'm sure any one of us knows someone or is someone who has suffered workplace violence. Too many healthcare workers just expect it now as part of the job and don't report it when it happens. Fortunately, there are proven strategies that can address this crisis, improving recruitment with strategies like high school career and tech programs and nursing bridge programs, expanding targeted financial aid and loan repayment programs, enacting federal and state laws mandating safe staffing ratios for the whole care team, putting safe staffing requirements into governmental regulations, and negotiating safe staffing levels in collective bargaining agreements. There is currently a federal bill in the House called the Nurse Staffing Standards for Hospital Patient Safety and Quality Care Act of 2023, S 1113 and HR 2530. There are many exciting things included in this bill. For example, the minimum direct care registered nurse staffing requirement. This would be a staffing ratio. Making shared governance part of collective bargaining agreements. And last but not least of these things, championing the right of healthcare workers to form unions and fighting employer union busting tactics. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jane. Next, we are going to ask Michael Flint to come to the microphone. Michael Flint is here on behalf of Pride at Work, I believe. He's a member of Local 71, statewide union here in Alaska, doing all kinds of magical things for the people of Alaska. Here's Michael.
Hi. Thank you, Joelle. Good afternoon, everyone. Like Joelle said, I'm Michael Flint. My preferred pronouns are he, him, they, them. I want to take a minute just to acknowledge the Dena'ina Athabascan people that have stewarded these lands that we stand on for generations. I also want to thank the AFL-CIO for asking me to speak today. Like Joelle said, I do work for the state as a consultant. Many people are familiar with the enforcement side of OSHA. They come in and write tickets. A lot of people aren't aware that there's free consultation services offered through the state. If anyone's interested, I just want to take a moment to highly encourage anyone to contact ACOS to sign up. 2 years ago, in 2021, work-related injuries claimed the lives of 5,190 U.S. workers. That's an 8.9% increase from the year before. An estimate of the annual chronic injuries and illnesses increase is between 460,000 and 709,000. Those are chronic illnesses and injuries, meaning that they have a long-lasting effect on the person's life and also will always have a rippling effect into their families and it continues on into their communities. Non-union employers and contractors have little regulatory oversight in regard to safety and health of their workforce. Like we just heard, even when there is a standard to be enforced, OSHA simply often doesn't have the manpower or the funding to visit every job site, find every hazard, and make sure every standard is being followed. Non-union employers, on the other hand, non-union employers also tend to be much more likely to be on that severe violator list that we heard about earlier today. While on the other hand, job sites that employ unionized workforces tend to have more highly trained employees that can determine what hazards are and propagate a culture of continued safety. Prompt and accurate reporting is a crucial factor in preventing injuries and illness and creating a culture of positive safety in the workforce. As a queer person and Navy veteran who served under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, I am very aware of what it can be like to have a fear that reporting an injury and illness could end your livelihood and potentially even further put your safety at risk. Data from the Institute of Medicine and Kaiser Family Foundation found that the LGBTQ+ community is far less likely to report injuries and illnesses due to previous discriminations. This is bad for everyone. Unreported injuries and illnesses hurt every employee and every employer. Employers need all relevant information to determine trends, find hazards, and implement necessary safety and health improvements. The best way to get all information is through creating a culture that fosters inclusion and a positive safety and health culture. Some of you might be aware that just last month, the so-called Alaska Commission for Human Rights removed all protections from the LGBTQ+ community outside of workplace discrimination. This won't stop there. Those people chipping away at the rights of the LGBTQ+ siblings we have are the same people working to remove worker protections under the guise of employer rights or right to work. Their goal is to create a culture that rejects inclusion, individual ideas and opinions. By creating a negative culture, they push each and every one of us to do their nefarious work for them. At Pride at Work, we regularly promote the idea of an injury to one is an injury to all. The only way we can fight back is by coming together to establish a culture that is inclusive and values the spectrums of thoughts and ideas. Now, if you've been listening, you might thought, hey, this mustache really has used the word culture a lot. And I agree. I thought the same thing when I was putting this together. But that led me to start thinking about, why does the word culture come up so often in my work every day and when I advocate for the queer community? It's obviously not about our culture as it relates to our heritage. I am very clearly a white American. My culture is primarily Real Housewives and mayonnaise-based salads. The culture I'm talking about is about inclusion. It's about continued intellectual achievement that carries on not only in our day-to-day work, but continues for the generations that come after us. It can't be accomplished by one person. It can't be accomplished overnight. It's a huge undertaking, and it must be effected from all sides. It takes an intentional, well-thought-out, concerted effort from everyone. Unions are a catalyst for change. Our unions are a conduit for creating a culture that embraces safety and demands its continued improvement. This is apparent in the fact that right-to-work states have about a 37% higher rate of fatal injuries. If we want to be provided a workplace where we don't have to worry about being terminated for reporting injuries, one where when we hug our families goodbye in the morning, we're not wondering if it's going to be the last time that we do that. We need to stand together as a community through organizations like our unions, Pride at Work, and by being politically involved. The best way for us to honor our brothers, sisters, and siblings that have died on the job is to band together and demand that workplace fatalities become a thing of the past. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Now I'm going to ask the Director of Apprenticeship Training for the Laborers Local 341, Suzanne McCarthy, to come and talk about safety in the construction workforce.
Thank you, Joelle. And thank you for inviting me to speak today. Okay, thank you. We must never forget those who have fallen and been killed, injured, or sickened on the job. We honor those who have sacrificed their lives before us. And we want to salute all those leaders that we stand on the shoulders of. Many people have endured unbelievable job sites and conditions. Unions have really helped solve many of those. Today, our workplaces are in much better conditions and safety protocol than they were 100 years ago. We have made great progress, but we still have a long way to go. As I sit here in the city and I look at truck drivers and airplanes and ambulances, all of these jobs are high risk. Construction is very high risk. And one of the ways that unions have helped solve a lot of those problems, and they need to continue to strengthen. One of the solutions is through apprenticeship. When we bring new people into the industry to work, if we can teach them safety and teach them to stand up for their basic rights as a worker and refuse to work in unsafe conditions, unhealthy conditions that will have long-lasting factors, that's how we're going to really make progress. The apprenticeship programs, and it's all of the construction apprenticeship, all of the apprenticeship programs are good for our community. They're good for employers because they retain their workforce and they have a safe workforce, a workforce that at least understands safety. They have offered benefits that many of the other companies that are just after that almighty dollar profit don't offer. Those benefits help them become stabilized members in our communities. And as a result, they're better community members. They can take time to understand and volunteer and help It really strengthens our communities. It also makes them better parents. If they don't have to worry about getting kicked out of their homes or how they're going to pay for their kid who broke their arm, they can be better parents and they can be involved in our schools. It helps solve the homeless issue. They can't afford housing. If they can get a well-paid job with benefits, they can overcome housinglessness. It also, when they learn a skill and they have a skill that people are willing to pay for, it decreases hopelessness and therefore solves some of our suicide issues and the hopelessness that so many people are facing right now with cost of living and the cost of everything. Most of the construction that we're working with and training apprenticeships for are training apprentices for are public works. And if these young people are trained and work on these jobs and get paid well and can be young parents that are there and present, it helps our community because they have ownership in our public works, in our buildings, in our schools, in our highways and bridges, in our airports, in every aspect. There is real no downside of training, safety, and having a safe culture where people don't have to die or have illness for the rest of their life because of their work. And I appreciate everyone coming here. And if you know young people that are lost, send them to an apprenticeship, and it really can change their life. Thank you.
I just want to wrap up by saying thank you, first off, to all of our speakers today. I think it gives a good window into the challenges that lots of different types of employers and workers face in this state. And I kind of want to wrap around a few of the things that were said today. Suzanne said it beautifully. We have come a really long way. In the last 100 years, a lot has been gained in terms of worker safety on the job. And then I'm thinking about what Christopher said about the opportunities that we face right now. We have a historic investment in our workforce, and we lack some of the workers we need to do it. So as a response to that, how are we going to behave? How will these employers behave when the pressure really mounts? It is up to us to be eternally vigilant because the pressure mounts and they start to cut corners. That's where we need to be. This is the danger of our times, right? In Iowa, they just passed laws to repeal child labor. They're putting kids back into work. We're going to slide backwards if we don't do what we all know what we need to do. Train our young workers, make sure they understand safety, get unions on the job site so when they stand up and say this isn't safe, they don't get fired. We have to be eternally vigilant. Our generation is going to have a challenge. We have to stand up to that challenge, brothers and sisters. I know we can, but we have to stand up. We have to be very, very mindful. There's a lot of pressure in the system right now to cut corners. We cannot cut corners. People die when people cut corners. This is what we are based on. This is the power we've built for 150 years. And I know this, they will not get away with it on our watch. I thank you very much for coming out today. I really also want to remind everybody that we are here every year at the Fallen Firefighter Memorial with intention. We are here in the one place in this town that honors people who have lost their life on the job. We appreciate being allowed to be here by the Anchorage Fire Department and the employees who built this together. And we commemorate all of these people who fell before us. And I view this as like, this is the one place in town that kind of is a representation of what many of us have endured. If we work in unions and we're helping workers, we sadly see people who get hurt. So I'm very grateful that we get to come here every year. It's a good reminder about how dangerous our jobs can be. And often the jobs that you don't consider to be dangerous, a nurse at the bedside, actually is one of the most dangerous jobs in this state. Highest rate of worker injury, workers' comp, let alone some of the other things they have to contend with. Thank you for coming today. I really appreciate your solidarity with the people who have fallen before, as well as the commitment this means for us to stand together and ensure that this opportunity, this blessing we have as a country to build our future will not be borne on the backs of people who died to get it. We're past that. That was 100 years ago. We're not doing that again. And I take your participation today as your testament that you're with me in that fight. Thank you very much, brothers and sisters. Thank you so much for coming.